Okay, good evening, everybody. It's Wednesday night, so we're going to learn halacha and Tanya. The halacha that we're in the middle of learning now these days is what's called how a person should conduct themselves morally. We learned it's very important. To be a mensch comes before learning Torah. It's very important to be a mensch, and Torah dictates really how a person should be a mensch. So first we were learning that you shouldn't be an extremist only with anger and haughtiness. Otherwise, you're just normal the road person. You shouldn't be like it says, don't be too much of a tzaddik. If the Torah says you can eat something, you can eat it. Don't be more religious than the Torah. That's evil, because we learned even a Nazirite who Torah calls holy, is still in a certain respect a sinner. He has to bring a sin offering because the Torah says you could drink wine. Why are you saying you can't drink wine? Okay, things like that. The last thing we learned last week in halacha was, even though sometimes a person needs to have chutzpah, because not to become affected by what friends, neighbors, family will make fun of and scoff your Yiddishkeit, but nevertheless, you shouldn't acquire the attribute of chutzpah, because chutzpah itself is not a good thing. That's what we're up to now. Okay, next thing over here is as follows. It's not good to fight for a mitzvah. In other words, many times you have in shul, this guy wants an aliyah, this guy wants an aliyah, this guy's fighting, they're fighting, they're killing each other, they have yarta, they want this aliyah, that aliyah, yarta, whatever it is. It says you're not allowed to fight, you shouldn't fight over a mitzvah, like who should daven for the Yomid, who should have an aliyah. We find in the Bais Din, they had the showbread. It's called the lechem apanim. The showbread that was on the shulchan that the kohen divided up. And the kohen would give the lechem, the bread on the shulchan was very holy. And people would grab it. And the Gemara says the tznuyim, meaning the more refined kohanim, didn't go fight for it. Even though it's a holy thing, it's a mitzvah. From there, the Gemara learns out, the fact is you're not supposed to fight for a mitzvah. And I'll give you an example, what it says in other places in halacha, that if a person, let's say, again, they have yartzeit, and they want to have maftir, and there's two people want whatever, certain aliyah. It says you do more harm. The reason why you're getting an aliyah, let's say before a yartzeit, before a birthday, whatever it is for the benefit of the soul. If you're fighting over it, it's more detrimental for the soul than getting the aliyah that you want to get in his memory for the yartzeit, because fighting it is much worse than the benefit that you're going to be getting by getting the aliyah. So therefore, halacha says you really should never fight for anything. Fighting is the worst thing Jews could do. Fighting in-house fighting, so to speak, between Jews and themselves. The next din over here, there's all again, but it's quoting it from the Rambam. Because the nature of people is to be influenced by their friends, their community, their neighbors. So therefore, it says a person has to connect themselves to Talmidei Chacham, to scholars. In fact, when you say you have a chaver in Hebrew means a good friend. So you have to be the mechaber, you have to connect, because really, why is chaver called a friend? The word chaver in Hebrew actually means chibur, binding, connection. The chaber means to connect. Friends connect. So it says, because people, this is the nature of people, that we are influenced by our neighbors, by our friends, by society, by the world at large. So therefore, you have to hang around tzaddikim, sit next to tzaddikim to learn from them. Because the true definition of a righteous person is not the way they learn or daven or anything like that. It's the way they behave. The Gemara says, I learned a lot from my students. I learned a lot from my teachers. I learned more from my students. I learned the most, from my friend. Let me get it straight. I learned a lot from my teachers. I learned more from my friends. I learned the most from my Talmidim. But the truth of the matter is, the Gemara says, Godel Shimusha Yesem Milimuda. In fact, the chsanim, when they get married and they say the mimer, the wedding mimer at the Kabbalah's Panim, the Rebbe brings down this Gemara. The Gemara says that Godel Shimusha Yosim Ilmuda. When you serve a scholar, I mean, you hang around him, is much greater than learning from them. Why? Because learning is an intellectual concept. But the way they behave, the most importantly, you could be a brilliant scholar and be a lowlife. You could be a brilliant scholar and be a mean person. And that doesn't take away really from your knowledge. You know a lot. But when you serve a person, the Gemara says, Godel Shimusha, when you serve a scholar, then you're watching their conduct, their day-to-day living. And in fact, the Gemara says this about Elisha and Eliyahu. There's a pasuk about Elisha. The Navi Elisha was a student of Eliyahu Navi. He says, Pray Yoshev Elisha, here sat Elisha, Asher Yotzak Mayim Ayidei Eliyahu, that poured water on Eliyahu Navi's hands. And the Gemara says, it doesn't say, here sat Elisha that learned Torah from Eliyahu Navi. It says he served them. Why? Because when you serve somebody, that means you're hanging around them, you're watching them, their day-to-day conduct, and therefore it says you should hang around tzaddikim, righteous people, to see how they live. You should distance yourself from the wicked people that go in darkness, not to learn from their evil ways. In fact, Shlomo Melech says a pasuk in Mishlei, if you go with scholars, you get smart. If you go with fools, you become bad. That's what Shlomo Melech says in Mishlei. So he says like this: the only problem with the next din, I'm saying we have to move to the moon. The Gemara says if you live in a city where the governing officials are corrupt and the people don't go in a proper way, you should move to another city where the people are more righteous. But the problem is in today's world, you have nowhere to go to. So might as well stay put. But this is the din that a person should hang around tzaddikim and deal with tzaddikim. That's one aspect of it. So you need to cling to tzaddikim. Why? To learn from them. And now the next thing is continuing like this. There's a mitzvah to connect, ludovik b'tamidei chacham, to connect to scholars. What do you mean connecting to scholars? The first way is befriending them, watch the way they live, learn from the way they live. This is the next thing, is like this. It says in the Torah, Bais Din, you should cling to Hashem. Okay? So the Gemara asks, is it possible to cling to Hashem? How are you going to cling to Hashem? Is he a human being? So the Gemara says what it means is connect to tzaddikim, tamidei chacham. And therefore it says, you should try to marry a daughter of a Talmid Chacham. You should marry your daughter to a Talmid Chacham. You should eat and drink with scholars. You should do business with scholars and connect to them in any possible way. And that's what it says in Pirkei Avos. There's a Mishnah that says, Havei misavek ba'afar ragleim. You should become dusty from the dust of their feet. What does that mean? Years ago, they didn't have shoes. Years ago, they used to sit on the floor. So it says you should get dirty by hanging around the feet of the Talmidei Chacham, of the scholars, because when they walk, they kick up dirt. People, when they walk on dirt, kick up dirt. So it says you should get dirty from their level of greatness. So there's two aspects. You need to cling to tzaddikim, number one, to learn how to behave properly. Okay? As we said, Elisha's greatness was not that he learned from Eliyahu Navi, but actually that he served Eliyahu Navi. In addition to that, the Chacham said you should try to connect in any way. You have a business deal, do it with a Talmid Chacham if you can. You have this, try to eat and drink, hang around Talmidei Chacham. Why? Again, because then we learn how to eat like a mensch, how to drink like a mensch, how to behave like a proper human being. Okay, next is the mitzvah called the Golden Rule. Or that's what Rabbi Akiva called it. Hillel said even more. But there's a mitzvah in the Torah you have to love every single Jew like you love yourself. You have to le'acha kamecha. The Torah says in Parshas Kadeshim, Rabbi Kiva says it's the golden rule of the Torah. The golden rule. What does it mean? You have to love somebody else like you love yourself. Meaning, just like you care about your own money, not to lose money, you should care about somebody else's money. If you honor yourself with defaming somebody else, and like we said, even if your friend is not there, but you start speaking about how great you are and putting down your neighbor, your friend, even not even there, you're not even getting embarrassed. Nevertheless, the Gemara says, whoever honors themselves with the defaming of their friend, have no chelik in olam haba until they do tshuva. You automatically forfeit their share in the world to come until they do tshuva. So there is this mitzvah, whether it applies to a non-Jew or not, is different opinions in halacha, because it says reach means a friend. So the question is a non-Jew considered your friend, or are they not considered your friend? So you have to, there's a different opinions in halacha that applies to them. But bottom line is like this. It's the well-known story that the prospective convert came to Hillel, to Shammai. He said, teach me the Torah while I stand on one foot. So Shammai took a stick and threw him out. He came to Hillel and he said, teach me, I'll convert well, if you teach me the Torah on 1 foot. So Hillel said to them, which translated loosely in English is, don't do unto others what you don't want others to do unto you. And Hillel said, Zahu kol ha-Torah kula. That is the whole Torah. The idoch pirushi and everything else is only an explanation of that mitzvah of don't do unto others what you don't want others to do unto you. And Rebbe points out in the Sikha that Rabbi Kiva said it's the golden rule. It's not the whole Torah. It's their rules, and this is the golden rule. Okay? But it doesn't negate other rules. Here, Hillel comes along and says even more. This is the whole Torah, and everything else is the explanation of it. That means it's not the golden rule. It is the whole essence of Torah. Why is that? And there's various explanations, which even though it's more chassidus than halacha, but I'm going to explain it anyway because it's so important. In Tanya, in the 32nd chapter of Tanya, what's called Perek Lamed Beis, what Rebbe said was Lev, which means the heart of the whole Tanya, is this Perek. Now, the Rebbe speaks about the mitzvah of Yahavta Recha Kamech. And he asks the question, how could you love somebody? Okay, and the question goes even more. The Maggid of Mezritch Maggid asks the question. There's a mitzvah in the Torah, you have to love Hashem. There's a mitzvah in the Torah, you have to fear Hashem. There's a mitzvah in the Torah, you have to love your friend. So the Maggid asks his famous question, I can command you on an action. How can I command you on a feeling? I could tell you, eat broccoli, even though you hate it, I could tell you, eat it anyway. And in action, I can command you to do something. You don't want, you love pork, I can command you, don't eat pork. It's an action. Do and don't. I can even command you what to think and what to speak and what to do. Okay, that we have ability for. But the Maggid asks him, Dr. Rebbe alludes to this question in Perek Lamed Beis of Tanya, how is it possible to command somebody on a feeling, I don't love you, okay? I can still be nice to you, I can respect you, I can be that's action. But how is it feasible that the Torah commands you on a feeling If I don't love you, what am I supposed to do? Turn on a love button? There's a button you press and you come. So the Maggid explains it, and the Alter Rebbe elaborates on it in Paraklamet Bais of Tanya. And that is as follows. We know Hashem created the person in a way, the nature of a human being, because in godlinesses like this, in the heavenly spheres, intellect stimulates feelings. Seichel meiled midah. Seichel, intellect, gives birth to emotions, which means like this. If I meditate into how kind God is, okay? For instance, we wake up in the morning. Yeah, thank God we woke up. Many people don't. We woke up. Well, God owes us anything. We woke up. Hashem was kind to us. He gives us what to eat. He gives us health, whatever. So when you meditate on that, that stimulates a feeling of love. If I meditate into how powerful Hashem is, that can create an awe of Hashem. So the Maggid says, the mitzvah, let's say, of Yahavtas Hashem Elokecha, which is one of the mitzvahs, we'll see later in about the mitzvah of loving Hashem. The mitzvah that the Maggid, Mizritchi Maggid says, is not the mitzvah you must love Hashem. The mitzvah is to think those things, and that you could do. I can tell you what to think and meditate. It's not a feeling, it's an action, of thought, of understanding, of intellect. I could tell you, meditate into the greatness of Hashem, and then you will love Hashem. In other words, the Mizritchi Maggid said, was something we say every day. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. Simply it means, hear, O Israel, the Lord of God, the Lord is your one. Yeah, and then Yahavtas Hashem Elokecha. You have a mitzvah to love Hashem. So the Maggid said, how could Hashem command us to love? He said, no. The mitzvah is Shema Yisrael. Shema means hear, understanding, meditate. Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. The God is one, and the only thing that exists in the universe is Hashem. So the Maggid says the Yahavta doesn't mean you should love. The Yahavta means you will love. In Hebrew, the Yahavta doesn't only mean a mitzvah. The Yahavta means you will love. Because if you meditate into the wonder greatness of Hashem, the Yahavta, you will love Hashem. So therefore, the Maggid said, what's the mitzvah of loving Hashem? To meditate, and then automatically you will. So the Alter Rebbe Paraklamet Bais of Tanya, which, by the way, there are deeper levels of Avis Yisrael, and then in Paraklamet Bais, but Tanya is a book of Beinanim, and therefore the Alter Rebbe is speaking a lower level of Avis Yisrael. And he explained this is the reason why Hillel said to the guy, this is the whole Torah, everything else is explanation. And the answer is like this. What separates me from you is our body. My body is not your body. It's a different body. And therefore, my body, by nature, comes before your body. Okay? Because I come before you. But that's only by a person who the primary importance to them is their body. What's the key to all mitzvahs? Hashem says don't eat treif. Okay, don't eat non-kosher. The only way you could do it, but the body wants to eat it, it's delicious. How can you overcome that? By a Jew realizing, you know what? The neshama is more important than the body. If my soul is more important than my body, that's the key to whole Torah. My soul is more important than my body. The food may be good for my body, but it's treif. It's poison for my soul. So if I only care about my body and not about the soul, I'm going to eat it anyway, because that's what I care about. A person that realizes the soul is more important than the body, so then what happens is the person will not eat it because the soul is what matters, and for the soul it's poison. So the Alter Rebbe says, what mitzvah personifies, or something was the wrong word, but what mitzvah depicts this aspect that the soul is more important than the body. The real mitzvah that shows this is loving another Jew. And Alter Rebbe says like this: a person whose body is more important than the soul will never come to loving another Jew, because my body is different than your body. But if a person realizes that my soul is more important than my body, and the reality is my body and my soul and your soul are all really the same soul. Kamecha, in other words, the Alter Rebbe defines it like this: simply means love your fellow as yourself. The Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, no. Means because he is yourself. You and him are the same soul. As long as the soul is more important than the body, then you will come to the mitzvah after Recha Kamecha. In other places, I don't want to elaborate now because we're learning halacha, not Tanya, but in other places in Chassidus it says that not only is the neshama the same, the bodies are also the same. We're all part of Adam Arishon. And therefore, not only is the soul the same, my body, your body, it's all the same body. Klal Yisrael is one big body. And therefore, just like if my foot gets into trouble, I'm not going to get angry at my foot and beat it up and hate it because it's my foot. So another Jew is part of your own body also. We're one big body. Anyway, so that's the mitzvah of V'ahavta Recha Kamecha, which means in halacha as follows. Somebody has a simcha, you have to feel their joy. Somebody, God forbid, has a tragedy, you have to feel their tragedy. Not say, oh, feeling it means it affects you. That you don't eat and you don't sleep and things like that. That's really the mitzvah of V'ahavta Recha Kamecha. And even the Baal Shem Tov said, and it's interesting, Baal Shem Tov said the mitzvah of Yisrael applies even to a Jew you don't even know exists. You never saw him. He's in the other end of the world. You don't even know he exists. By the way, which is off the record, it's probably easier to love such a Jew than a Jew you do know. A Jew you don't know, of course you love him. Why not? You don't know him. You have nothing to do with him. He never did anything wrong to you. But the Baal Shem Tov is saying this mitzvah of V'ahavta Recha Kamecha is going to any Jew, that anywhere in the world he's part of me. And therefore it says, I mentioned many times, it's a very interesting story. We mentioned, in fact, I don't think it was too long ago. The Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Rebbe, had an older brother that was shorter than him. The older brother was shorter than the younger brother. And it really bothered the older brother, the Razak, the Zalmanar. So what did he do? Once when they were playing, he was the older brother. He dug a hole in the ground, okay? And he made his brother stand in the hole. And now he was taller than his brother. He felt good. Their father, the Rebbe Marash, was watching from the window the way this scenario played itself out. And he called in his son, the Razah, and he said to him a one-liner, but it's such a profound thing. He said, you don't make yourself greater by putting down somebody else. They're making somebody else lower. You want to make yourself greater, make yourself greater. Don't put down somebody else. It's not the way to do it. And that's what this halacha over here is. If you have COVID, you respect yourself with the defaming of somebody else, you defame somebody else, the Gemara says you have no chelik in olam haba, you don't have any share in the world to come. The nether din over here is the opposite of V'ahavta Recha Kamecha. Just like there's a positive mitzvah to love a Jew, if you hate a Jew, you transgress a negative commandment. It's a leisisnas achicha b'lvavecha. You're not allowed to hate a Jew in your heart. And again, all these mitzvahs that the Torah says, b'lvavecha or v'yareisim elokecha, you should fear God. Rashi brings down in Chumash, Hashem says, you might be a good actor to somebody else. You might say, oh, he's my best friend. But God knows what's God knows what's going on in your heart, whether you love him or hate him. So there's a positive mitzvah you have to love every Jew. There's a negative mitzvah that you're not allowed to hate anybody. And therefore, if somebody does something bad to you, it says, don't hate him and just keep it bottled up inside you. Because then really what you're doing is going to hate him. What you should do is, mitzvah love to tell him, speak to him nicely, say, why did you do this to me? You know it bothered me. Maybe the person will apologize. Maybe the person will say, I didn't realize I did it. Maybe, whatever. Now, because there's a mitzvah of admonishing. Now, if somebody did something wrong to you and they ask you forgiveness, you should forgive right away. In fact, the pasuk they quote for this is in this week's parsha. When Avimelech took Sarah away and God punished him, so God, Hashem said to him, ask Avram forgiveness, so forgive you, because he's a righteous man. So it says, as soon as he asked him to forgive, Avram Avinu forgave him right away. And it says not only that, Vayispalol Avram Elokim, Avram Avinu davened to Hashem to forgive Avimelech, because Hashem made him all plagued, whatever. In fact, so the Gemara says, by the way, and by the way, this is if you want to talk from a business perspective of an investment, it's a very simple thing. Hashem reacts to the way we act. Okay, that's the bottom line. We said Hashem Tzilcha, Hashem is our shadow, he follows us. Hashem reacts to the way we act. That's the way he set it up. Doesn't have to be that way. This is the way Hashem wanted. When Hashem sees that we forgive somebody else right away, then Hashem will forgive us right away. If Hashem sees that I really hate this guy, I don't want to forgive him. He did a terrible thing to me. I don't want to forgive him. Then think about it. Why would Hashem want to forgive us, it says? We do worse to Hashem. He gives us our whole essence, our life and everything, and we rebel against him. No. So why should Hashem forgive us? So if Hashem sees we forgive, Hashem will forgive us. If we don't forgive, then why should Hashem forgive us? So it's a very practical business investment. It pays to forgive somebody with your whole heart. Not the but to mean it, that you're forgiving. So it works like this. To put it into a nutshell, it's getting late. You don't hate a person. You hate what they do. Okay? When a parent has a child who misbehaves, if it's a normal parent, they don't hate the child. They love the child. They hate what the child did. It's a fundamental difference. I love the kid, but I hate what they did. The mitzvah of the after recha kamecha, and halacha I'm talking now, and leisisnas achicha b'vavacha, not to hate them, means very simple. I hate maybe what they did to me. I hate the bad they do, but I love them. And therefore I really want them to improve and to become better. That is the mitzvah of the after recha kamecha, and not to hate the Jew. That doesn't mean you can't hate what they do. But the simple classic example is when a parent has unconditional love for a kid, that doesn't mean they love everything the kid does. They love the kid, but they hate what the kid does sometimes. Okay, we're going to go to Tanya.